basically the magazine, at least I have really pushed hard to make sure that the magazine is a reflection of the new organization. So we have a section that's totally focused on conservation initiatives, conservation activities. We have a section that's totally focused on fly fishing skills and fly casting. We always have fly casting column. And then we also have fly tying.
That was Len Zickler letting us know what to expect from the next Fly Fisher magazine edition from Fly Fishers International. This is the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show.
Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show, where you discover tips, tricks, and tools from the leading names in fly fishing today. We'll help you on your fly fishing journey with classic stories covering steelhead fishing, fly tying, and much more.
How's it going, everyone? Thanks for stopping by the Fly Fishing Show. Please take a moment to click the subscribe button on your app of choice so you can help us find more people out there and so you don't miss the next episode, which is potentially Gunnar Bramer. In today's episode, I talk with Len Zickler, CEO of Fly Fishers International, aka FFI. Len tells us the FFI story and how it began with Mel Krieger first starting the casting certification, how Dec Hogan was a game changer early for Len, and why they made a recent change from FFF to FFI. Find out what the FFI Learning Center and the resources they have and why they're helping fishermen out there. Don't miss this one as Len announces his retirement on the show today and who the next CEO is. This episode is sponsored by Deli Fresh Design, an all-American creator of fine, sustainable fly fishing gear. Stay tuned later in the show to hear how Ross does his part to reduce his waste and impacts with DLD, and how he builds great equipment in a sustainable fashion. You can find fresh equipment designs on Instagram at Deli Fresh Design, and you can get 20% off your next order using the coupon code WFS20 at delifreshdesign.com. We are also sponsored by the Gray Drake, who provides high-quality heritage fly fishing tackle while being a good steward of our sport. The new Fall Run fly box they have available for 2019 features small and medium-sized clips on one side of the box and slotted cork on the other. Naturally self-healing and hydrophobic, will hold flies from the smallest midge to the largest stoneflies. Head over to thegraydrake.com and use the coupon code WFS20, that's WFS20 at checkout to get 20% off your next order of vintage today. So, without further ado, here's Len Zickler from flyfishersinternational.org. How's it going, Len?
Awesome. It's a beautiful morning this morning. I wish I was on the water, but I'll take this.
All right. Where are you at now?
Well, actually, I am in Spokane, Washington, and on my way to my office. But it's
cool.
It's a good, beautiful day, and looking forward to this conversation.
That's all. I was just talking to somebody yesterday about Spokane, and what the heck do they say? I don't want to, kind of rip on Spokane too much, but they were giving it a hard time as a city. Like, I know what it was. They were coming back across from some, Montana trip, and they had to stay in a hotel there, and they said it was pretty rough. But I've always passed through. Have you spent some time in Spokane?
Oh well, I was born and raised in Spokane.
Oh, there you go.
Grew up actually on what we refer to as the West Plains of Spokane, just west of the main city on Stillwater and some spring creeks out there, in the middle of wheat fields. And years and years ago, Spokane had a pretty sketchy reputation. But in the last 20 years, it's really undergone a renaissance. Terrific restaurants, lots of great outdoor activities. It's a mecca for recreational activity, whether it's fishing or enjoying lakes or skiing, water skiing, snow skiing, hunting. My gosh, it's got everything here. It's a beautiful place.
That's cool. So there's not much to she must have just ran into the wrong part of town. So it sounds like it's a pretty awesome place to hang out.
Oh, well, there's no excuse for a bad hotel in Spokane. There's so many great choices.
There you go.
Never call me next time.
Yeah, I will. Okay, good. So we're going to jump into some fly fishing, and Fly Fishers International, that's going to be a focus here and all that. But yeah, maybe you could just take us back to how you first got into fly fishing. And we know already you started in Spokane, but how did you get into fly fishing? Then how did Fly Fishers International come to be?
Yeah, sure. Like I said, I've been fishing since I was 3 or 4 years old, bait casting with my uncle on still water, primarily on the West Plains. But I like to say back at about 95, my wife made the mistake of buying me a fly rod. She thought I might enjoy fly fishing since I was an avid fisherman in general. So she bought me this fly rod, and it sat in my closet for about a year. And I owned an engineering company in the Seattle area, and one of my engineers, one of my staffers was an avid fly fisherman, and he actually suggested on a field trip I'd bring my rod so he could check it out and maybe we could cast a little bit. And he took one look at that. I don't know. I'm not even going to tell you what it was, but it was a pretty cheap, heavy butt excuse for a fly rod. And he said, "Len, that's not going to work." And so fortunately there was a little Orvis shop at the top of the hill from where we were fishing. We were fishing on the Little Deschutes outside of Olympia, Washington. So we went up to this Orvis shop, and I bought a little basic Clearwater introductory rod from Orvis and a Rocky Mountain reel, cassette reel, and got me all lined up. That's more money than I've ever spent on and that was very inexpensive too, but it was more money I'd ever spent on anything, related to fishing. And so that was my start. And of course I was piling line like crazy and really struggling with the fly cast. One of the things we learned pretty early as bait casters is that that's not how you cast fly line, right?
Yep.
So I really wanted to become a better caster. I think the movie had been out by that time, and of course we were all taken by the beauty of the fly cast. And so I actually sought out some instruction at the local fly shops, and still struggled for a long time. And you probably know the person by the name of Dec Hogan, who's an incredible steelhead fisherman in the Northwest here. So I went to he was hosting a little trip to a private lake, Isaac's Ranch, and out in eastern Washington, and Dec was there, and I had bought an expensive pontoon boat and all my fancy gear, and all my friends and buddies that were part of this trip, they had all their gear. Of course, they've been fishing for decades, and they knew what they were doing. And I got out there, and I looked like a fool. And but primarily, my problem was my cast. And Dec watched me and said, "Hey, Len, you need to speed up your cast and then include a stop in the back cast and the forecast." And all of a sudden, I had been struggling all day long, hadn't caught a darn thing, didn't even know how to tie a fly on my tippet. And so he helped me. He took a half an hour, spent a little bit of time with me, and all of a sudden I was casting much better than I had been. And I actually caught a couple fish that day. Everybody else, had 20, 30, 40 fish, and I had 2. So those are the most expensive fish I've ever caught in my life. But I really was so excited to have gained, it's sort of a journey of self-discovery. And that day I kind of discovered, okay, I'm getting this. I finally get how to do this. So I decided I really wanted to improve my casting. And so at that time, the Federation of Fly Fishers, our old organization, had a casting certification program. And so I thought, that's a merit badge I need. So I actually pursued some additional instruction with the goal of getting my casting certification, which I did. I was able to do that. And so that's how I began. That was back in like 1999, 2000. And so I owned an engineering company, and my specialty was water quality. And so I discovered this sport of fly fishing that was pretty closely tied to, my passion for clean water and healthy habitat. And that's fly fishing. And so that's where my journey began. And I got involved in club activities. I got involved with the Washington State Council of Federation of Fly Fishers, and then later I was actually asked to join some committees at the national, and that's kind of where I landed in my recent gig. So,
wow, that's great. That's that's an awesome story. I a lot of things come to mind, as you're talking there. And one of them is on the casting certification, because that's a big, I think, at least when I first thought about FFI, or FFF, casting certification, right, I think is what brought me into it. I started thinking about that and hearing about it. It seems like casting certification, I've had, a few people on here where we've talked about it, and some people where really it changed, their lives really going through that. So you went through it not thinking of, it doesn't sound like being a guide or something like that. Do a lot of people go through that even though they're not really necessarily getting into the fly fishing, industry sort of thing, or they just go there to become better casters? Is that pretty common?
I would say that's pretty common. I think people want to become better casters. I know that was my desire. I've also been very interested in education, and so I realized that if I had that certification, then I'd be qualified, or better qualified, at least have some credentials to suggest that I might know what I'm talking about when it comes to teaching fly casting. So that was kind of secondary for me. I just wanted to be a better caster.
Yeah.
Regarding guides, casting certification is really difficult, and some would suggest it's too difficult.
Yeah. Was it difficult for you?
Yeah, it was. It was, I actually sought out, folks who were on the casting board of governors. One of the things about the Pacific Northwest, particularly in the Seattle area, we actually had 3 or 4 people who were master casting instructors who were on our board of governors. So I actually went to them and got specific instruction that was focused, and they really emphasized. And this is fairly typical. Most guides are outstanding fly fishermen, great casters and outstanding fly fishermen. But if there's anything that they lack, it's ability to really communicate how to teach fly casting, but also diagnose specific issues. Yeah. And that's something that is really part of the casting certification program, is that sort of diagnosis and troubleshooting piece. And so I'll just share, when I took my test, finally felt prepared enough to take the test, was back in about 2004. There were 8 of us that took the test. We were at the it's that recreational center, or it's kind of an exhibit hall adjacent to what was the Kingdome at the time, downtown Seattle. There were 8 of us that took the test. There's a written part, so I aced the written part, but I was the only one that passed that day. And there were 3 or 4 outstanding guides. I mean, guides who have been guiding forever. So it wasn't that the cast was the issue; it was the teaching element that was the issue for them. And many of them had subsequently have gotten their certification. But so that's our emphasis is really on communication and education when it comes to certification. Yeah.
And that teaching element, the pieces that, like you said, where people come to you they want to learn to cast, and as a teacher, you need to figure out how to diagnose their issues and solve that problem. That's part of the test that can be that's a challenge, or it can be a challenge.
It can be, for sure. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. No, that explains. I just didn't realize, it's good to hear your perspective on that, and we'll dig more into, some of this as we get, but just quickly, I wanted to jump in before we get too far along, just on the history. And, one thing that comes to mind recently, you guys, you've changed from, well, and maybe you could start off first talking about, I don't think we've even talked about your position currently, but let's talk about your position, what you do there, what you have done, and then the FFF versus FFI, why the change in naming, or the acronym there?
Yeah, those are all really good questions and important questions that we felt needed to be addressed and answered. But my involvement at the national level started in 2014. I was actually asked to chair the committee to find my replacement, president and CEO. Our president and CEO at the time had announced his desire to step down and retire And so it was recommended we form a search committee to accomplish that. And for whatever reason, I was nominated chair of that search committee. That was in 2014. And then after a couple of years, he actually stepped down, and I didn't feel, and the committee that was involved didn't feel really ready to. Well, one of the first questions we asked is this position going to continue to be a part-time volunteer position, president and CEO, or should we move to a full-time professional executive director or executive officer? And the strong majority of board members at the time felt that we were ready and desired to go to a full-time executive director or president and CEO, professional paid position, similar to other organizations that we aspire to, like Trout Unlimited or Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, folks, organizations who are doing a wonderful job for their sport, for our sport. And so we decided to go to a full-time executive director. But one of the concerns that we all had was we had no strategic plan, strategic direction. If I were to have been, or if anyone were to have been interviewed for that position back in 2014 or 2015, one of the first questions I'd ask is, well, where are you guys headed? What's your plan? Do you have a strategic plan? Have you thought about it? Where have you been and where are you headed? And we couldn't answer any of those questions because we didn't have it. There had been some volunteers who had worked on it, but because of sort of leadership issues, we had never gotten to the point of actually calling for a vote in support of a strategic direction. Mm-hmm. So that's where I started. By the way, I'm a professional planner, and so it really bothered me that this wonderful organization had no strategic plan. Right. So we set about. A group of us got together in Denver, Colorado, in 2015. And we set about to develop the framework for a strategic direction and a strategic plan. And then once we had that in place, the next thing we needed to do was really investigate our finances. We had received a couple of pretty significant contributions, donations to the organization that we wanted to guard and protect, jealously. So we actually put some restrictions in terms of we wanted to make sure that we had held that money for at least 3 years. Mm-hmm. So we really weren't in a position financially to take the step to hire a full-time executive director at the time. So I moved from that committee chair to actually chairman of the board for a year, along with a couple other folks. And then from chairman of the board, I actually was appointed the interim president and CEO. So that occurred in 2016. So I've been at it this will be my third year. So that's kind of the transition. As you're aware, the organization's been around since 1965, when Lee Wolf and several other icons of our sport, decided that, hey, there was a need for a national fly fishing organization. And they called them, they sort of described themselves as a loose affiliation of clubs that should come together to really promote the art and science of fly fishing, and with a primary goal of really conserving our resources. So, their vision was, at the time, the Federation of Fly Fishers, as being a conservation-oriented organization. That was in 65. And then over the years, the next really 4 decades, the organization, continued primarily at the grassroots level as a loose affiliation of these clubs that would get together on an annual basis, and have a little club party. They called it the Conclave at the time. And they would offer classes. One of the icons of the sport, a fellow that was I claim as one of my mentors, was Mel Krieger. Mm-hmm. And so Mel, every summer, along with other really outstanding fly fishermen, fly casters, would teach, a variety of fly fishing classes, including a variety of casting classes. It was Mel came up with the idea, and a couple others, of of this casting certification program, which was developed in the early 1990s, mid 1990s, and then and it's become what it has become. Now we have, the a CI, the sort of the basic level, a certified casting instructor at the basic level. We have a master's category. We actually have a two-handed category as well. So we have those. That became a very, very successful and popular program. The other vision that Mel and others had at the time was the concept of developing a fly fishing academy, kind of Orvis 101 on steroids, if you will. And so one of the things that we tackled in our strategic plan in 2015 was this concept of developing an academy. We weren't sure if we wanted to call it academy because we really felt it was important for us to do something more virtually, something that would be very accessible to the general public, but also our members online. Big shift in that direction, rather than whereas academy almost suggests a static location, a building or something. So we really searched and talked and debated what we should call it. And so here's 2.5 years ago, we actually came up with the moniker, the Learning Center. And so we now have FFI, or Fly Fishers International, has what we call our Fly Fishing Learning Center, which has a comprehensive list of curriculum, study guides, student guides, teachers' guides, and very strong descriptors that are all available on our website for the use of our members and clubs and councils across the world, but certainly here in the United States. And that's a big part of our new direction, is really strengthening the curriculum that's offered in our learning center, and making sure that people are aware that it exists and they can access it on our website for the most part for free. And it's really outstanding. So one of the things that we're trying to do is reach out to, for example, to shops and to guides, having a good lesson plan in place when you're doing introductory fly fishing classes is important. That's all available now on our website, and so you can join, download that material and use it, in your business. So it's very, very valuable material.
Right. Or you can use it just if you're somebody that wants to learn a little more about fly fishing, just for the general public.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's all about that. Right.
Cool. Yeah. I'll put a link in the show notes to that resource, and anything else we talk about here today, I'll make sure that's easily available. So yeah, thanks that's a good clarification on where it came from. And I did have Lee Wolf on. I just talked to Joan Wolf. She's going to be on the show probably down the line here this summer. And I'm interested, of course, Lee Wolf, I'd love to hear more about the story there. And I'm sure a little bit about his background, but obviously he was, one of the big influencers in the early days. I just did want to get back to, so basically it sounds like casting, the certification, conservation, the academy. I mean, what do you say right now does FFI do best?
Well, back to that strategic direction, one of the things that we really felt it was important for us to define is who we are and what is important, what should be important to the community of fly fishers. And so we actually have 3 pillars. Conservation is incredibly important to us. Education, and whether it's fly tying or general fly fishing skills or fly casting. So education is the second pillar, and the third pillar is the community of fly fishers, and doing what we can to support the community of fly fishers, whether it's individual fly fishers or clubs or special groups like women's groups or veterans, for example. So or youth like Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or 4-H. So that's our really important part of our organization, is doing what we can to reach out and share our knowledge, but also support that community of fly fishers. So those are the 3. Mm-hmm. I'd say that our strength, what really sets FFI apart, is our focus on education. Just speaking about that briefly, I'm always asked the question, well, what's the difference between Trout Unlimited and
Yep.
Fly Fishers International? And first of all, let me say that Trout Unlimited, I'm a life member of Trout Unlimited, and Trout Unlimited is another organization. And I want to be a better fly fisherman, a better caster, but I was also looking for an organization that had a strong ethic in protecting the environment, and that is Trout Unlimited. And so they're really focused on the protection of cold water habitat and trout fisheries, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fly Fishers International, one of the things that sets us apart is, and probably one of maybe our biggest challenges, one of our monikers is all fish, all water. So not only are we interested in cold water trout fisheries and streams, but we're also interested in saltwater, warm water species. If it has anything to do with fly fishing or fish habitat, we are an organization that will be in it that's interested in protecting that and really doing what we can to promote folks' enjoyment of all of those fisheries.
Hence
so
the Fly Fishers International.
Yeah, and TU, their strength is really in their conservation work. We partner with TU all the time. We're kind of a little add on to a lot of their great work. But if we're given an opportunity to support a habitat restoration project or some other environmental project that TU is doing, we're all over it. We just look for the invitation and we'll support them both financially and with our volunteers. So what really sets FFI apart from TU, let's say, or other organizations like that is the education piece. So we have this comprehensive education program, whether it's fly tying or casting or fly fishing skills or conservation. We have curriculum that we can use to help strengthen individuals as fly fishers, but also clubs and councils who are there to serve the fly fishing community. So, that's kind of what sets us apart is the education component, the education element. Whereas I would say TU is really, their strength is really on the conservation side of things.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that clarifies it for sure. And yeah, that's a pretty broad, when you talking about cold water, where TU is focused on kind of the North America stuff. That's a pretty broad spectrum when you think about the number of species around the world. And I've interviewed, Jeff Currier was on and talked about how he's, at 400 species, and that doesn't even, there's plenty more out there. That's pretty broad. How do you guys, it's a pretty, the strategic, plan and all that. How do you, how far do you look out and how do you know where to go next? When you think about saltwater, for example.
One of the things that we feel is very important, regardless of where you are in the United States or in North or South America or Europe or Australia, New Zealand, Japan, I don't care, or Indonesia, for example, we have a real strong group of fly casting instructors in New Zealand, Australia, Indonesia. One of the things that we're working on right now, we had to kind of attend to our just organizational needs over the last 3 or 4 years, but we have developed an international committee. And so this, what I'm about to say, applies not only internationally, but also domestically. So imagine the fly fishing community, whether you're saltwater or warm water or trout or steelhead or whatever the case may be, geographically distributed around the United States and around the world, you have fly fishers who have different interests, different perspectives. There are clubs or individuals who have no interest in fishing whatsoever, but they have a strong interest in tying flies, for example, or they have a very strong interest in being better casters. Now, so their focus isn't so much on fishing, but on particular elements. And what our perspective would be is we want to support those individuals, those clubs at the local level, whether it's international or domestic, and offer them the best curriculum, the best program that they can support, they can have, whatever interests they might have. And so that's kind of our perspective, is just making sure that we have really strong quality curriculum or programs in those various areas and support the specific interests that are occurring at the local level, at the individual and club levels. So we have clubs, for example, affiliate clubs, who are totally focused on the rehabilitation of wounded veterans. One of our partner organizations is Project Healing Waters Fly Fishing. So we probably have 70 affiliate Project Healing Water fly fishing clubs. Their whole focus is to do what they can to help in the rehabilitation of injured veterans, and so that's an example, very specific. I mean, they're interested in fly tying and casting and rod building, but their primary mission is to assist the wounded veteran, and so that's an important part of our organization, is to support affiliate or related organizations like that. So it's an example of we let folks at the local level sort of define what their passion is, and we try to support their passion with good quality curriculum and programs to self-support them.
Let's take a quick break from a word from our sponsors. The Gray Drake. Since 2014, the Gray Drake's mission has been to provide high-quality heritage fly fishing tackle while being good stewards of our sport. They use sustainable cork instead of silicone or foam inserts in their fly boxes. These cork inserts are naturally self-healing and hydrophobic and will hold flies from the smallest midge to the largest stoneflies and hoppers. Be on the lookout for the new Fall Run fly box available in 2019. This aluminum fly box features small and medium-sized clips on one side, and on the other, slotted cork, which is perfect for bombers and skaters. Conservation is the key with the Gray Drake, and they support great organizations including Utah Stream Access Coalition and Trout Unlimited's Wild Steelheaders United. Head over to thegraydrake.com to check out their classic selection of fly boxes and wallets today. We are also sponsored by Deli Fresh Design, a company that makes sustainable fly fishing gear in the heart of Denver, Colorado. Deli Fresh blends old waders and Cordura canvas to make rugged, river-tested gear, such as fly wallets, koozies, and their classic sling packs. You can listen to the full podcast interview with Ross, the founder of DLD, at episode 79 of this podcast. But take a quick listen to a short clip from that interview that gives an example of how Ross reduces his waste with his personal actions as a business and highlights his dedication to conservation.
But as a company, I'm trying to reduce my impact by riding a bike or taking the bus or shared cars, stuff like that on for commuting. And then, when I go fishing, I'll get in a car, but I try to go with other people. And so I think there's things that as consumers that we can do on a daily basis, not just to throw money at a problem. I think that's the last thing we should be doing, is sort of deciding where we can make an impact on a personal level. And I think my own mentality of doing those things on a daily basis, like driving or riding a bike, and then trying to see what materials I can use that reduce waste, or what I'm trying to do as a person and as a company.
Let's help Ross and DLD do great things today and this year for fly fishing and conservation. All of DFD's gear will help you spend more time casting and less time juggling your stuff. To see these great products, go to Instagram and follow them, where you can see their latest designs, or you can head over to delifreshdesign.com and use the coupon code WFS20 to get 20% off your next order. Okay, back to the show. If you had somebody that wasn't aware of what you had going, was new to it, what would you tell them to, like, where to start? Say they don't know whether they want certification or anything. Is there a easy kind of, start here button sort of thing, or what would you say?
Yeah, that's a really good question. One of the things that, when I first took this position, when I first got involved 5 years ago, and then as I got into chairman of the board and my current position as president and CEO, I would always be asked this question, and that is why, okay, this Fly Fishers International or Federation of Fly Fishing, why should I join you guys? What's in it for me? What do I get? What do I get for this? And so that was a really important question that we didn't really feel we had a good, 30 or 60 second elevator speech to address that. I always suggested maybe the best way to answer that question is to talk about your personal journey. What brought you to fly fishing in the first place? So one of the things that we've been trying to do is make sure that when we're asked that question that we can respond in a way that is meaningful. So one of the things that we've done, we have our casting certification program, which is like going to college to be a fly caster.
Yeah.
And a master's level is kind of like the master's degree or a PhD in fly casting, right? So one of the things and one of the things that's been a little frustrating to me as a certified fly casting instructor, sometimes the certified casting instructors have this sort of, we're perceived as being a bit elitist, and arrogant. Yeah. And certainly there are some examples of that, unfortunately, that I can, that's really frustrating to me. And so one of the things that we decided to do, and our fly tires are outstanding, actually began to develop the skeleton program, and that's called a Fly Tying Skills Awards program. And so we've done the same thing with the casting program. We have a Fly Casting Awards skill program. And so if somebody came to me who was interested in, being a better caster or just a better fly fisher, what I would suggest is, if you're interested in fly tying, start tackling the Fly Tying Awards program. So we have a bronze level, a silver, and a gold. Same thing with the Casting Skills Awards program. We have a bronze, silver, and gold way. The bronze level is, with a half a day or a one day class with a skilled instructor, you could have your bronze certification pretty quickly. And those programs are designed as very much a easy entry, beginner oriented. At the end of the day, you actually see some positive progress, hopefully, which will generate some excitement and further interest in going further. And by the way, we implemented the Casting Awards Skills Program last year. The Fly Tying Skills Program has been around for probably about 5 years now. And both of them are being just strongly embraced. Everybody's really excited about it. It's really exciting to see somebody, after some basic instruction, be able to, achieve that bronze level of fly casting. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do is, I always say, it's not so important that people are casting tight loops, let's not worry about,
And actually, you don't always want the tight loop. That's the thing, right? Sometimes you want an open loop.
That's correct. Sometimes you want an open loop. And so what I've said is, the most important thing we can do as casting instructors, for example, or as fly tying instructors, is to simply engage people in the sport. Get a fly rod in their hand. I've said this many, many times. I will never forget the first time I had a fly rod in my hand. And it was my grandfather's fly rod. I found it in the boathouse out at our family lake place out on Silver Lake, west of Spokane. We took it off and it was all lined up, ready to go. Took it to the end of the dock and we flailed away. We had no idea what we were doing. Okay. But I can tell you that in July 1962, I had that fly rod in my hand. Okay. We were out there for about 15 minutes, got totally frustrated, took it back in the boathouse, put it away. And I didn't pick up another fly rod until, 20 years later. And that was up at Priest Lake in North Idaho with a friend of mine who fancied himself as a fly fisher, and he was trying to do the same thing, teach me how to fly cast. Had that rod. So I remember 1984. That was the next time I had a fly rod in my hand. And so to me, the important thing is getting a fly rod in the hands of people who might be interested, because they will never forget. They'll never forget that. They'll hold that. and it may pay dividends, like in my case, 40 years later,
Right.
when my wife bought me that stupid, chunky fly rod, now, gosh, it's really been a very important part of our life for the last 25 years. So it's
Yeah.
kind of crazy how things evolve.
That is cool. I'm glad you hit on the fly casting skills. Actually, Callie Freeman in the Facebook group that was a question that she wanted me to ask. So I'm glad you answered that.
Yeah.
And actually on the fly tying, definitely you're doing something definitely good there, because I think the word's getting out on that. I've heard some feedback, some chatter people are liking, what's going on there. So
Yeah.
that's good stuff. I was going to check in just a little bit with, you have some other things out there, the FFI fair, the magazine, some things that we probably won't have a lot of time to get into, but with the magazine, that's something that I know has been out there and you've made some changes. How would you explain that magazine, what that's all about for somebody who's never read it before? And how do they get their hold of it? Is that you have to sign up to get a hold of that magazine?
Yeah, you do. One of the best ways to find that magazine, and I shouldn't be promoting this, but if you were to go to any of the regional events, regional fairs, or the fly fishing show that
Sure.
the Ferenskis put on around the country, and then go to the FFI booth, we always have lots of giveaway copies of that magazine. We're going to have tons of them at the expo here in Bozeman coming up in a couple weeks. So, and actually, we did a little bit of an experiment. This last issue, we actually had it at Barnes and Noble on the newsstand, and so so you can buy a copy of it, or you can actually join the organization. And I think there's a $10 surcharge to get a copy of the magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, the magazine, at least I have really pushed hard to make sure that the magazine is a reflection of the new organization. So we have a section that's totally focused on conservation initiatives, conservation activities. We have a section that's totally focused on fly fishing skills and fly casting. We always have fly casting column. And then we also have fly tying. And then one of the things that we try to do in that magazine, we want to make sure, we've been accused, and actually this is something that we still have to do a lot of work on, as being an old white guy organization.
Right.
The average age of the organization when I joined was like 69.
No kidding.
And primarily white males, right?
Huh.
And so one of the things that we've really tried to do over the last 3 years is whatever we can to actually change the makeup of the organization. One piece of that change is making sure in everything we think, say, and do, it looks like the kind of people that we want to be part of the organization. So we do want to attract a lot more diversity to the organization. We'd love to have, I think we're up to over 10% now are women, whereas when I started, it was about 8%.
Mm-hmm.
So we're making some positive strides. We have a long ways to go. We really have a long ways to go. So regarding the magazine was totally repurposed and redesigned. So it not only covers our 3 pillars, but we also want to make sure that we have we present ourselves from an international perspective, but also in terms of the different user groups that are part of our organization, whether it's Women's Connect or youth or veterans. We want to make sure that the magazine reflects, everything we're trying to accomplish as an organization for the fly fishing community.
Right. Nice.
So that's the magazine. I will tell you this. We have a bit of a debate going on organizationally about the future of paper, the future of continuing to print paper.
I'm glad. I just want to hit on that. I think that's an awesome point, because I actually, in a recent episode, I had somebody that they called out TU on that same note. They basically said they love TU, but they received so much paperwork in the mail that they unsubscribed, or they got out of TU because of that reason.
Yeah, no, I'll have to echo that. As a life member, when you join as a life member, you really get the privilege of cutting hundreds of trees down every year.
Yeah.
So
yep.
I get probably every 3 weeks an appeal from TU for
Yep.
to support their very valuable programs. So one of the things that we are examining as an organization, I mean, here we are, we call ourselves conservationists, and yet we have this focus on paper. And I mean, we use recycled paper and all of that, but the printing and delivery process is very expensive and not very responsible from an environmental perspective. And I don't want to sound like an environmental wacko, but as a practical matter, if we call ourselves a conservation organization, one of the things that we ought to think about is, how do we operate? What can we do to really, do a better job for our planet? So one of the things that we're exploring is the concept of going more digital in our and the concept is to perhaps begin to focus on or take a step to develop a digital magazine where we can present our message in a much more with a lot more flexibility and a lot more creativity. So we can embed videos, have conversations with folks, just a lot more flexibility, and it will allow us to reach out to our membership or those interested in the fly fishing community on a more regular basis. Rather than twice a year in the magazine, every month or every 2 weeks, or every day, maybe a different message in some different form. Just as an example, we rolled out what we call our anthem video here 3 years ago. I'd invite you to check it out on YouTube or Vimeo. It's 4 minutes long, and it was produced by Brickhouse Creative out of Bozeman, Montana. David Thompson and his staff are just, oh my God, outstanding. They actually were helped Yellowstone Forever in their repurposing and in their work. They produced that video for us, and that video really explains pretty well who we are and what we want to be in terms of the future of fly fishing. So it's a great video. But what I wanted to share with you is that video was developed and posted on social media, Facebook and Instagram. And then also, David and his crew was able to distribute it through other outlets. Listserv, they were able to actually take advantage of listservs that existed. We actually got over 100,000 views of that clip. And from a social media perspective, I think we're up to something over 800 engagements. 30,000 engagements and about 800 shares, which I'm told is pretty remarkable, and not just one clip. So I saw that, I thought, we need to we need to take a different approach of presenting ourselves rather than all this paper and these magazines that go out primarily to our members, right? We have 12, I think we have 4,000 or 5,000 subscribers, but they're already part of the club. So these are not new people that are getting the magazine. No. These are people that are part of our organization. So, a better way to do this sort of communication is the power of this digital media that we now have. And so again, Brickhouse Creative is managing our social media for us. They're doing a remarkable job just in terms of they're asking very engaging questions and really getting, users to respond very positively. And it's been fantastic.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I think, the Pat Flynn is a guy that I follow out there, and he's got this saying that is pretty much, be everywhere. And that's, I think, this day and age,
right.
It's good to have a little bit of everything. The magazines are great because some people love that. But there's some people, especially the younger generation, that they'd much rather watch a video or something else, or or a podcast.
It's interesting. My wife and I occasionally have an opportunity to get out of town, and we've got some adult children that will watch our house for us, and of course, I love the newspaper. I read the newspaper every day, delivered to my doorstep. We come home from vacation here last summer. and there are like 7 newspapers stacked on the front porch. It's like, guys, there are 2 problems with this. One, you're not reading the newspaper, and 2, they're stacked up on their front porch. Everybody knows we're not home. But that's youth. Yeah, they don't. Younger people are not engaged with the old media formats as I was, or as our parents were. They have so many other ways of reading the news and engaging with topics of interest to them, and we just need to keep that in mind and somehow begin to incorporate those approaches into our communication approach as well.
Nice. Yeah. Well, let's, I've got some other questions on here I think we'll try to get to, but we might run out of time. So I wanted to get into just quickly kind of a rapid fire round to kind of wrap this thing up or get us towards the end here. And
sure.
These are just some questions, some random questions, some stuff that I think, hopefully might be interesting. But started off, the first thing, I mean, do you have a common question that you get or you think FFI gets that you kind of have to field a lot?
Well, I've mentioned a couple of them. One is, what's in it for me? And the other question is, what's in it for me? Why should I join your organization? And the other question is, what sets you apart from some of these other, outdoor sports or conservation organizations? And so those are the sort of the big questions I always get. And one of regarding the conservation questions, our organization has been really skilled at playing hide the ball for the last 45 years. We've been involved in conservation activities, conservation projects at the local club level, at the council level for decades, but nobody knew anything about it. I remember a local club member once on this question related to why should I continue to be part of FFI? You guys aren't doing anything. And so it's not that we weren't doing anything. It's just that we were playing hide the ball. We weren't telling anybody.
That's right.
And so one of the things that's really cool right now is we have an incredibly engaged conservation committee. We have conservation grants that we're giving out on a regular basis. We've got money in that bucket, and we're pleading with people to reach out to us and apply for these conservation grants. And we're doing remarkable work, not only in the United States, but around the world. We funded a project or helped fund a project in Tibet on the restoration or preservation of a free-flowing river in the Himalayas. It was a fantastic project. So, that's one of the things that get a lot of questions about. What are you guys doing on the conservation side of things? And we're doing a much better job now, and not only funding those projects, but letting people know what we're doing.
Gotcha. Yeah. And that makes sense. And that's kind of from my perspective too. I didn't know a lot about the organization, and really the casting instruction was the main thing that I always thought of. And I had no idea really on the conservation end at all. So that's good that you guys are getting more of the word out there. Well, what is, what do you think is something, maybe this is on the same lines, but something, nobody knows about FFI?
Well, I've touched on a couple of those. People are not aware, as much aware as I'd like them to be about the curriculum that's available at the Learning Center, on all categories. And then I also, same thing with our Casting Skills Awards program and our Fly Tying Award Skills program. Both of those are very important programs that have just been developed here in the last couple of years. And so they're in their infancy, and so that's another area where we're working hard to let people know that the curriculum exists, and that we really want to we want to do what we can to get that word out so people can take advantage of that great curriculum that's being developed. Nice.
Yeah, that's huge. I'm definitely going to dig in and like I said, I'll put a link to the show notes to all that. Definitely look forward to checking that out. What is, well, here's one for you. Finish the sentence sort of thing. So finish this sentence. Fly fishing needs.
More diversity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More diversity. it used to be people would suggest that fly fishing was expensive, so we needed more affordable equipment.
Oh,
that
right.
doesn't exist
No.
anymore. I mean, gosh sakes, there's so many great choices. You can buy a really a nice quality outfit for a fraction of what it used to cost.
Yep. And how did that happen? Was that just the normal market, industry responding to the market and sort of, or did groups like yourself have an influence on that whole thing of,
Yeah, no, I give credit to the industry in that regard. I mean, it's the sort of the power of capitalism, I suppose.
Yeah.
Market forces.
Yep.
Not everybody could afford a $800 Sage fly rod.
Yep.
or G Loomis. So people were looking for more affordable approaches, and I think TFO and Echo, kind of mid-range, have done a wonderful job in that area. They reached out to organizations like Lefty Cray, for example, and others to, one, promote their products, but also promote fly fishing in general, and then develop products that are really approachable, affordable, for particularly for beginners. Sage has even done that. I mean, I think that's one of the transitions in the industry. We're seeing they're still producing these very high quality fly rods, but they also have brands that are much more affordable, and they're getting them in local sporting goods outlets so that people can easily access the sport. As a matter of fact, I have a son-in-law yesterday who said, "Hey, I really need to buy I want to, really get into fly fishing, but I don't want to spend a lot of money. Where can I find a good rod?" And so I said, "Hey, Sportsman's Warehouse, take a look at the Reddington package." I said, "Don't do 5.6, get a 5-weight for our waters in the Pacific Northwest. You're going to get a 3-piece with a case, reel, and a fly line, and it's the best deal for less than $140. It's fantastic. Yep. I've got bass gear that costs $500. So yeah, there's no excuse for it.
No, for sure. What's the is there a what's the best advice you were ever given?
Oh, the best advice I've ever been given related to fly fishing, huh?
Well, it could be or just life in general. I mean, I know that's a loaded question, or however you want to put it.
I would say the best advice that I've ever been given was from Mel Krieger. And that is, he asked us, his students, to always recognize that they're ambassadors of the sport, and to always be approachable and friendly. So, when I was when I was really young in the fly fishing game, I can remember being on the Yakima and Cle Elum rivers and on the east slopes of the Cascades, and I found this wonderful stretch of water in the Cle Elum, and and there's a fly fisher there, and so rather than kind of stay back and watch and see how he's doing, I got right into his pocket of water. I didn't know,
Oh, right.
I did not know. Yeah. And, he didn't react very well to that. And I walked away from that encounter as like, wow, what a jerk. He's kind of a jerk.
Right.
Well, not recognizing, I was the jerk because I didn't have the common courtesy. I didn't have the knowledge. So Mel would have said, look, the way to do that is, as an experienced fly fisher, is to offer a bit of education to the individual that you just had an encounter with. So one of the things that I always do when somebody approaches me, and it's happened to me, I've had people kind of get close or want to talk about what I'm using, how's the fishing going. And to me, that's an opportunity for us to share our knowledge and really engage people in a positive way. So I always talk about, hey man, isn't it great to be out here in this creation? Because this creation is amazing. I just love being out here and fishing and enjoying this. And it's great. Can I help you with anything? What can I do? Do you need anything?
Yeah.
Want to fly? Here's a fly, And oh, by the way, there's a great hole, 200 yards upstream here.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
But, so Mel would have said, we have opportunities to engage people in a very positive way, and, look for those opportunities and do it, engage people in a positive way, bring them to the sport, don't turn them off.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to put that. Do you have a kind of a must go-to fishing destination that's kind of on your list?
Oh, I really, I'm primarily a trout fisherman. So, and I love the Pacific Northwest. So, we really love North Idaho, North Fork of Coeur d'Alene, the St. Joe, and on into Montana, the Clark Fork, and over the hump there, the Clearwater, the Upper Clearwater is pretty remarkable. Kelly Creek, those are pretty remarkable fisheries. I'd have to say that I've probably spent more time on the Yakima in Washington State than any place else. The Upper Columbia is also a special water. From the Canadian border down to Northport, it's just stupid. It's so cool up there. Big fish, wonderful fishing. Yeah, that's a great fishery as well.
Yeah, no, that's a great. Definitely, we've talked. The Yakima has come up a number of times, and the Upper Columbia. I actually just had somebody recently tell me that I need to go out and find a guest to talk about that fishery. So that's good stuff.
Yeah, the Yakima, you could spend easily a week just beginning to introduce yourself to the Yakima. There's the Upper Yakima. There's the Upper Canyon. There's the farmlands. There's the Lower Canyon. The Upper Yakima, we actually own property up there. And so I call that the holy water up there.
Yeah.
I'm not the only one that calls that. I mean, it's fabulous. So yeah, Yakima's great water.
That's good stuff. What about, this is kind of a random one on your music. Do you have any favorite bands or types of music you like to listen to?
I'm an old school, rock and roll guy. Don't take this wrong, but I love Stephen Stills.
Oh, yeah. Well, now, why would I take that wrong? This is Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young.
Well, actually, Neil Young. So I have friends, particularly in the military, who'd say, Neil Young, what a jerk.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, that whole thing, right?
Yeah, but I love those. I love some contemporary artists as well, but yeah, so I'm kind of a 60s, 70s rock guy. I like Dire Straits.
Oh yeah,
another good one.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, what's Dire Straits? One of their big songs was what do you think? I guess Money for Nothing, right?
Money for Nothing or Something to Swing. All of those are really good. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Cool. All right. So in your home river, I guess you mentioned the Yakima or some of those up there. If you had to pick two flies for kind of the end of time, what would those two flies be?
Well, I got to mention the Spokane River right in the heart of downtown. So that would be a Pat Stone.
Okay.
With maybe a brassy or a lightning bug, dangling from the backside of it.
Yeah.
On the Adams dry fly, it's kind of a great all-purpose fly, although, foam hoppers and stuff on the Yakima, in August and September, pretty killer. So
yeah. Have you ever tried the missing link?
No.
You gotta give that one a shot. I had okay. Oh yeah, it was a classic. A recent episode. Let's see if I can find it here. I had we were talking about from the Redding Fly Shop. Let me just grab this real quick, and we were chatting about the best flies and same sort of thing. Your 222. And so this was actually Mike Mercer. We were talking Lower Sacramento River and he's got a bunch of flies he's designed, tons of the Psycho prints and all this stuff. Right. But the missing link is this one that's just this cool. It's kind of like an elk hair caddis. Anyways, I took it out on the next trip on mine, and I literally couldn't get the fish off the fly. It was every cast, and he said the same thing. I think he might have even said he quit using it. It was so good. So for those that didn't hear that episode, you should listen to episode 81, and you can hear about that.
I'll definitely do that. I'll be all over my Googling that, the missing link.
Yeah, it's cool. So cool. Well, I think we're about there. So in the next 6 to 12 months, anything you want to kind of let us know what's going on with you personally or the FFI or anything else?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm really happy to announce that I'm retiring here at the end of this month.
Oh, wow. I thought I saw something about that.
We've hired a new president and CEO, Patrick Berry, out of Vermont. He's an outstanding. He actually has a degree in from University of Montana and guided in the Missoula area for 10, 15 years. Pretty well known. A lot of connections in the fly fishing world. Really dynamic guy. Very exciting. Certainly, he has the ability to really do some pretty cool things with our organization. So we're looking forward to that. He actually starts here on July 15th. So, and so the expo will be in Bozeman. I believe that's the 26th through the 25th, 26th, and 27th. So I'm headed there in 2 weeks, and so those are the big things that are going on right now. And organization is in great shape, but I'm looking forward to the future.
That's good stuff. Okay, so if they want to find you or the any of the resources we talked about, flyfishersinternational.org is the best place to go.
That is correct. Yep.
All right, Len. Well,
and I always tell people, anybody has any questions for me, find my number. And I'm always open. My life is 24/7, 365. So I enjoy talking fly fishing with anybody.
So to track you down, is it just go to the website, or do you have any other places?
Just go to the website. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just go to the website. Yep.
All right, perfect. Well, thanks for all the information, and I think I definitely have a different perspective on it, and hopefully this helps a few people understand what FFI is all about. So until we connect again, we'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
All right, see ya. Bye.
Bye.
So there you go. If you want to find all the show notes with all the links we covered, just go to wetflyswing.com/ you guessed it, FFI. That's wetflyswing.com/FFI. Please take a moment and head over to Facebook, search for Wet Fly Swing, and follow us so you can keep up with our antics over there. Thanks again for stopping by. Check out the show today. I'm looking forward to catching up to you soon, and hope to maybe see you online or on the river.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com. And if you found this episode helpful, please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes.